and what is next. Statements of Lavrov. As you know, dear friends, a majority of our community, I'm quite sure, already knows that day before yesterday, Lavrov made his speech during General Assembly of UN. And let me give you some key points from his important statements. So, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov addressed the 80th season of the UN General Assembly and held a press conference where he discussed their dialogue with the United States on Ukraine and responded to accusations against Moscow of violating NATO airspace. On the cause of a conflict in the world, Lavrov began his speech with the historical background. He recalled that the UN emerged after the end of World War II, and the principles of the Charter continue to serve as a beacon of international cooperation. However, for this to happen, all member states, without exceptions, must adhere to them. The West, however, has repeatedly sought to divide the world into us and them while floating their principle of non-use of force. This, according to their minister, is the root of international problems. Among them, Lavrov cited NATO's eastward expansion towards Russia's borders, despite its own promises not to do so. At the same time, threats are being made to use force against Russia, which has been um, groundlessly accused of intending to attack alliance countries. European countries are even calling on their citizens to tighten their belts for the sake of militarization and are openly discussing an attack on the Kaliningrad region. However, any aggression against my country will be decisively rebuffed. There should be no doubts about that, Lavrov said. Also, Russian foreign minister believes that the responsibility for bringing the international situation back to a peaceful course lies with Russia and United States. Extending their New START treaty for a year after its expiration will help avoid the new arms race. At their press conference following the speech, the Russian foreign minister stated that there are currently no signs that the United States is backtracking on a dialogue with Russia. Okay. He also responded to a question about the recent drone incidents, emphasizing that Russia does not target European and NATO countries with missiles or drones, which is true, by the way. If Russia will target intentionally European countries with missiles and drones, there would be no questions about it. Is Russia targeting or not? Everyone would know, yes, Russia is targeting, right? Because it will be visible and everyone will feel that. According to Lavrov, if a drone violates someone's border by straying, the military has the right to deal with it as they deem necessary to ensure security, which cannot be said about attempts to do the same over the Russian territory. But if there are attempts to shut down any flying object or any object at all on our territory, in our airspace, then I think people will seriously regret it, Lavrov said. And I guess he also meant neutral territory, because Russian planes, while during the training, quite often are flying over the neutral territories, right? In northern sea, in northern seas, let's say, right? In Arctic region, also in the Baltics, by the way, elsewhere, right? And so if anyone dares to target Russian planes, either on the Russian territory or in a neutral territory, that's how I interpret the statement of Lavrov, then consequences going to be very serious for that term. On the causes of the conflict in Ukraine, Russian foreign minister went to say that current leadership in Kiev came to power after the coup d'etat, which is true, factual. Ukraine is the only country in the world that has banned its citizens from speaking their native language, which is also true, by the way, factual. Russian language is a native language for a majority, I will say, of residents on Kiev-controlled territory. And dear friends, we should keep in mind that Kiev regime is targeting not just Russian language and Russian speakers, but they are targeting, for example, Hungarian speakers. And Budapest expressed its concern on numerous occasions due to poor treatment or criminal treatment of their ethnic Hungarians in the country. Europe remains silent about the crimes of the Kiev regime, which is allowed to do everything, including reckless sabotage at the nuclear power plants. Also true, by the way, and the Kiev regime not just allowed by their NATO countries to conduct these nuclear terrorist attacks, but West is directly involved in this. If anybody believes that Kiev regime is targeting nuclear power plants without authorization or even order from London, for example, then I have Mount Everest to sell to that person. Kiev regime does nothing without authorization of its Western masters, period. UN refused to name the alleged victims of the massacre in Bucha, for which Russia was accused, which is also true, by the way. Russian Federation on numerous occasions demanded from UN's special purpose team that was allegedly working on their topic. Russia demanded on numerous occasions from UN and also from Kiev regime to share the names of the victims. And to nowadays, even though this Bucha story was weaponized and used against Russia, for how long now, isn't it? By Kiev regime, by Western so-called elites, Western media, they did not provide no names of their victims. You tell me why. You tell me why, dear friends. If there is no actual proof that those people that were killed in Bucha were pro-Russian people, pro-Russian residents of the so-called Ukraine, and they were killed by Kiev regime's forces. Because I remind you, dear friends, that if you go and check the videos, if they're not being deleted completely from internet, I mean, initially when videos were published, civilians that were killed in Bucha, that was Western reports, by the way, right? Those people that I saw in videos had their white bandages on the hands. White bandages, right? And which side was using white bandages? Russian side, right? And pro-Russian residents on Kiev-controlled territory were using white bandages to demonstrate their alliance, right? So it's a legit question. Why for so long names of their people, names of the victims of the Bucha tragedy have not been published? Why? Moscow has been and remains open to negotiations to address the root causes of the conflict. At its core is ensuring Russia's security interests and the rights of the Russians in Kiev-controlled territories. Lavrov stated, also on point, by the way, 100% there. Ukraine's return to its 2022 borders is out of the question, which is also factual, by the way. In no way in this or any other universes Kiev regime or NATO gonna be able to reclaim new Russian regions, right? And as Russian President's press spokesman Dmitry Peskov said yesterday, I believe, with every passing day, situation for the Kiev regime and its NATO backers is worsening, and negotiating position of the Kiev regime is worsening with every passing day, which is also true. We have a quote from Lavrov. In my opinion, no one is counting on them anymore, because counting on the return of those borders would be political blindness and a complete misunderstanding of what is happening. On the situation in the Middle East, Russian foreign minister stated that Russia strongly condemned the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023, but there is no justification for the killing of Palestinian civilians, no for terrorist attacks. They want to bury the UN decision to create a Palestinian state through a coup d'etat. Russia considers the West attempts to reinstate sanctions against Iran in the UN Security Council unacceptable and illegal. the balance of power in the world is fundamentally different from that established 80 years ago, and this must be reflected in in the system of UN institutions and reforms of the Security Council. Russia advocates for its democratization exclusively through expanding their representation of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I guess Lavrov means by saying so more members to join security permanent members of the Security Council, more countries to join permanent members. Right now, as you know, dear friends, permanent members are Russia, US, China, France, and UK, which is not justified. Absolutely, I mean, situation is very different now in the world than it was 80 years ago, and I think India, of course, have to be permanent member of the Security Council. South Africa, of course, have to be permanent member of the Security Council. When it comes to South America, by the way, Brazil, leading economy, definitely have to be, I think, permanent member of the Security Council as a representative, direct or indirect, of interests of the region, right? Not just itself, but also region, because obviously every country is interested in safety and the security of not just itself, but region too, because otherwise you cannot have a security. So at least India, South Africa, Brazil should join Security Council, right? Permanent members. Some other countries also can be considered. Iran, by the way, or any one country from Middle East should be in a Security Council to represent interests of the region, right? Why there is no discussion about it? Actual, I mean, meaningful discussion, just statements, but you know, Russian side, Chinese side, other countries. India is very active about this matter, and maybe sometime in the future we will actually see reforms in the UN, which will make this institution, little more capable. Because right now UN is kind of a freaking joke, man. Unfortunately, which is unfortunate, but that's what is happening. I mean, tell me when last time UN actually managed to resolve anything. Why UN is unable to stop massacre of the civilians in the Middle East? Why UN is unable to stop this genocide of the Palestinian people committed by Israel, fascist entity that Israel has become? It's just UN General Assembly high-level week, as you know, opened on Tuesday. World leaders assessed their international situation and addressed key conflicts. Secretary General Antonio Guterres launched the event by calling for peace in Ukraine. Yeah, Guterres should work without sleep to resolve to help Palestinian people, first of all, that are in absolutely desperate situation. So that's some key statements from Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation during his speech in UN, and then during the press conference. And probably you noticed there, dear friends, that Lavrov once again kind of hinted that our relationships with the European regimes are tense. European regimes are destructive force. That was, that's what Lavrov was hinting, kind of, if my reading is correct of the statements. But same time, he was saying that Russia and US are still on communicating and are on the side of the escalation, right? And some members of our community might be a bit frustrated with this approach that somehow Moscow is pointing at US as to be less destructive than European regimes. And I think very same members probably will find this statement of Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, also kind of irritating, that Putin is ready to meet with Trump in Moscow. Yet again, yes, I mean, it seems like Moscow has different attitude towards the administration of US and their different attitude towards the globalist control regimes in Europe. Maybe because Russian leadership still hopes that that somehow, while talking, negotiating with the U.S. administration, they will manage to persuade opposite side, American leadership, to pull out the country from this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. Let them try. I mean, after all, I might be skeptical about it because I don't think anyone from the Western elites can be trusted, neither from Europe, neither from US. I mean, you cannot trust none of them, right? But that's my personal take. I don't think Trump can be trusted. I don't think Rubio can be trusted, or any other representative of their administration in US. And I don't think leadership of UK or France or Germany or Italy can be trusted, for that matter, right? But nevertheless, I guess among Russian leaderships there is also like different groups, right? And right now, initiative is in the hands of a group that still hopes that maybe they will manage to persuade American leadership to pull out their country from this proxy war. I mean, again, let them try. I don't think this will work because, in my personal opinion, US leadership is absolutely on board with the globalists and the neocons in their war against Russia. But nevertheless, let everybody try to do whatever they can to reach the escalation. Maybe they will succeed. Maybe they will succeed. There is, after all, nothing wrong in attempting the escalation, right? Even if it sometimes can be frustrating. But as I said, by the way, I don't think U.S. administration is about the escalation. I think they are completely on board with the globalists and the neocons. And we have, for example, this reporter from Telegraph, British media, so-called media outlet, that Trump shifted his stance on Ukraine after meeting with a British king, so-called king, man. Who the hell is that freaking creature? According to Zelensky's head of administration, Andrei Yermak, in the comments to the Telegraph, allegedly, diplomatic sources suggested that their timing was no coincidence. Their monarch reported raised the Ukrainian issue. Allegedly, the so-called king of UK raised the topic of Ukraine during the private talks with Trump throughout their recent state visit that Trump undertook. The so-called king hosted the Trumps at the Windsor Castle, joining them for a lunch, dinner, and a full day of events, even briefly mentioning Ukraine in his banquet speech. And I don't know, of course, is this report correct or not? Did the so-called king of UK influence Trump or not? But maybe they did, because Trump was very happy. He himself highlighted several times that this is a big deal that he was on state visit second times, that it never happened before, or very rare occasion when one leader is being in UK with a state visit. If it means anything, man, who does give a damn about Windsor Castle or this freaking so-called royal family of the UK? I have no respect for them whatsoever. I don't have respect for British royalties, so-called, or aristocracy. I think they are worst of the worst representatives of humanity. After all, they are leading force in the globalist movements, among the globalists, right? I would not shake hands with those animals, man. But anyways, that's the reports, by the way, that globalists actually influenced Trump while he was in UK. It could be true, man. Could be true. God knows what they told him. God knows what they promised him, directly, indirectly, any other way. But once he went back to US, he made this U-turn, right? And then began saying some stuff that even diehard Trump supporters not really understand. I mean, and they are questioning what the hell, right? And by the way, there is now two directions when it comes to this Trump's U-turn, two directions in the media and also even in alternative media, by the way, not just in MSM, but in alternative media too. Some people are suggesting that Trump basically dumped Ukraine on Europe, right? And in reality, he's still focused on pulling out US from this proxy war. I don't think so. I have different take on the situation. I don't think Trump is in a position, because he is extremely compromised. I don't think he is in a position to dump Ukraine anywhere, right? And so I think, even though I can see logic behind the statements that U.S. ruling class wants to shift the blame for inevitable disaster for the West in regards to Ukraine, for inevitable loss. U.S. administration wants to, shift the blame on Europe, and European elites are trying to do the same in regards to US, by the way. Yes, this blame game is going on from both sides there, but nevertheless, to say that US is dumping Ukraine and pulling out from this proxy war is just, exaggeration on just unbelievable scale, because US is providing weapons, US is providing intelligence assistance. And by the way, this intelligence assistance is cost money, right? Those satellites and satellite imagery and all the other resources that US is using, it costs money. So claim that US is financially no longer involved in this proxy war is also not true. US still is very much involved financially too in this proxy war, right? So therefore, I don't think US is pulling out from this conflict. What I do think is that yes, US political class, US ruling class wants to shift the blame on Europe, if and when things will go down bad for them, and it will, right? Eventually, of course, Western elites will be forced to capitulate before Russia. It's just inevitable, right? But until that day, they are still trying as much as they can to harm Russia, right? And that's why I think next phase of escalation is inevitable. Next phase of escalation that West will launch in short time, and they are preparing. They are preparing, by the way. And for example, this report from Wall Street Journal claims that Trump told Zelensky he was open to providing a new long-range weapons to Kyiv regime, formally to Kyiv regime. In reality, we all understand that all these long-range weapons, especially missiles, by the way, are operated and they're prepared for launches by military staff from country that those weapons are belong to. In case of Storm Shadow, for example, it's British militaries, right? And British intelligence services. In case of Scalp PG, it's French militaries and French intelligence. In case of ATACMS, it's a US militaries and US intelligence. And in case of other long-range weapon systems that US might deploy against Russia, it could be ATACMS, it could be other weapons, even Tomahawks being discussed, right? Tomahawk cruise missiles. Of course, it will be US militaries and intelligence too. And the topic itself is clearly one more indicator that the West is planning unprecedented scale of escalation with Russia. And I already said what, in my personal opinion, that escalation is going to be. I can repeat, by the way, I think when they will launch this next phase of escalation, they will try simultaneously to conduct a decapitation strike on Russian political and military leadership. Threats already been issued, right, through Zelensky. But nevertheless, when Zelensky says something, it's globalists are saying stuff, right? And Zelensky already threatened Russian political leadership just a couple of days ago. So I think this next phase of escalation gonna look like combined assault on Russia. So it might be attempt of decapitation strike against Russian political and military leadership, massive, unprecedented scale of drone and missile strikes on Russia, simultaneously large-scale terrorist attacks inside the Russian territory by assets of the NATO member states that unfortunately they might have here in Russia. And there are simultaneous cyber attacks, massive unprecedented scale cyber attacks on Russian infrastructure to create basically a chaotic situation to basically their hope is that with this next phase of escalation, they will topple government, they will create chaos, they will topple government, they will topple regime system, and eventually their dream is to achieve strategical defeat of Russian Federation. And they are open. They were openly saying that they are dreaming about dividing Russia on different parts and then to basically use it as their base for resources of all sorts, right? So that's what they are planning, by the way, and they are not even good at hiding it, because why would otherwise Trump said there that he might authorize long-range strikes? Also, yet again, Wall Street Journal, I already mentioned that Trump allows restrictions on Ukraine strikes against Russia to be lifted. And I mentioned Tomahawk missiles, isn't it? There are negotiations, allegedly, also during the negotiations, allegedly, also was discussed the delivery of Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range of up to 1,500 kilometers. U.S. administration is considering this option as well as the alternative of supplying additional ATACMS missiles. And I remind you, dear friends, that Germany just months ago or 2 months ago, relatively recently, asked U.S. for Typhoon launchers. And Typhoon launchers are used to launch Tomahawk cruise missiles. And who knows, maybe those Tomahawk, those launchers already being transferred to Germany by US and then from Germany to Kiev-controlled territory. And maybe Tomahawk missiles also, even though allegedly, there are some reports in the Western so-called media that Trump, for now, refusing transfer of Tomahawk missiles. You can never know. Trump already demonstrated that he's personally engaged in all sorts of deception operations, for example, against Iran. Trump and Witkoff, his envoy, were directly, personally involved in deception operation to cut Iranians off guard of incoming strikes, right? And they succeed in that, unfortunately. So therefore, anything that's been said by Trump cannot be taken seriously. You cannot trust him, right? So it well might be that not just ATACMS will be sent to Kyiv regime in big numbers, but also Tomahawk missiles and other long-range weapon systems from US. So that's, this is about Tomahawk, by the way. As I said, a number of media outlets in the West, including Axios, are reporting that Trump for now refused to transfer Tomahawk missiles. But how we know that Trump said that, or this information was shared by Axios not as a part of deception operation to cut off guard Russia, for example? Of course, Russian intelligence community is not relying on some open sources. They have their own sources to know what's going on. But nevertheless, these media operations, these deception operations that Western elites are personally engaged in, also something that we should keep in mind. And that's why I don't believe that US is pulling out of this proxy war against Russia. And I don't believe in all sorts of statements or when from European so-called elites, when they are whining about US dropping Ukraine on Europe. For example, Kaja Kallas, top diplomat of Europe. Every time I say this, I want to laugh, man. That Kaja Kallas, this tremendously stupid individual, by the way, is a top diplomat in Europe, but it's factual, right? She's a leading figure in EU diplomacy, formally at least. So Kaja Kallas went to criticize US kind of for its decision to point at Europe that, about you do you now, it's up to you. to support Kyiv regime. We will give you weapons and stuff. Yet again, Callas is engaged in deception too, and all the other European representatives that are whining now about these recent statements of Trump. Let me give you some details on that. So Brussels is not solely responsible for helping Ukraine and its conflict with Russia. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas told the Politico on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. Their comments follow US President Donald Trump's recent apparent change of stance on Ukraine after he suggested that Kyiv, with the support of European Union and the NATO, Trump emphasized NATO too, was in a position to fight and win. Some observers saw the remark as a Trump stepping back from the conflict after failing to make good on his pledge to end it quickly. And yet again, dear friends, whenever there is this talk about this Trump's U-turn, focuses on Europe, right? But Trump, I mean, we can go and read that statement of Trump's, right? I don't think he deleted his tweet or his post on Truth Social. He said, Europe, yes, he mentioned Europe, European Union, but he also said NATO. And he emphasized that NATO should play a key role, right? And when it comes to NATO, which country is the leading country there in that alliance? Last time I checked, it was US. Which country spends most on NATO? Last time I checked, it was US. So how come that US is dumping Ukraine when US is their main financier and their main force in the NATO? And Trump says NATO gonna play a key role. So you see clearly all these people, all these representatives of their Western elites, in my personal opinion, including Callas and all the others, and also all the Western so-called media that are saying that Trump is dumping Ukraine, they are engaged in a misinformation, in a deception operation. Because Trump clearly said NATO. And when it comes to NATO, it's US too. It's US too. Same time, I can take her argument that U.S. political class wants to, create a ground based on which they will say once Russia will finalize the victory, they will say it's Europe's fault. And by the way, European elites are doing the same, right? Including with comments like this that Callas is making, that they are preparing ground to say no, it's US's fault. I mean, they dumped Ukraine on us, and otherwise results could be different. At same time, both sides, US and Europe, is of course fully engaged right now in this proxy war against Russia.
Hello everyone, I hope you find informative and useful this short clip from main news update, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience. And if you like my work in general and want to support to save this media project, you can assist through several ways. You can donate to this project through PayPal platform or Boosty, also with the crypto currencies, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, many thanks to everyone who already helped and continues to support. Thank you.